Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I hope you've had a good week and ready for the weekend. So, go ahead and get your Bible and look with me in the 69th Psalm. Psalm 69. I'll be picking back up there today. And Psalm 69 and picking up in the 13th verse. Psalm 69, the 13th verse. And again, the Psalm, we've looked at three sections of this psalm so far. One, we learn to cry out to God in our time of need, that we confess our responsibility, any sin that we may have in the situation. And then we move on into the third section where David discusses the fact that he is suffering, he's being abused because of his faith. And so we'll pick up in the 13th verse now, where I love how the 13th verse starts. But as for me, David, after having listed how these people have abused him, how the rejection has come, how all those who have attacked him, he gets to verse 13 and says, "But for me, I'm going to continue to serve God. I'm going to continue to trust Him. I'm going to continue to pray. They can ridicule me, they can make fun of me, but I'm going to continue to trust, as he says in verse 13, in the multitude of his mercy. And so this is again, I love that. I just most verses I've noticed, and I think you'll see this as well. When you see a verse start with the word "but," usually it's really good or really bad. And David has just described a really bad situation where people were ridiculing him, persecuting him for following the Lord. But as for me, I'm reminded of the passage, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. But as for me, my prayer is unto thee, O Lord. And so he commits that he is going to continue to pray for deliverance because he believes that God is going to hear his prayer. I'm praying, and in an acceptable time, O God, in the multitude of thy mercy, hear me in the truth of thy salvation. And so he says, but as for me, I'm going to keep praying because I know in his time he is going to answer me. He is going to deliver me. I don't know when it's going to come. I don't know how it's going to come. But I know that God is going to sustain me and going to keep me. And in His time, He will defeat, overcome those enemies who attack me. And for me, honestly, out of this whole psalm, if we don't pick up anything else but learn, I would even say memorize at least part of that verse. But as for me, my prayers unto thee, O Lord, and in an acceptable time, O God, in the multitude of thy mercy, hear me. That is a great promise to have. That is a great weapon, great tool to have in our tool belt to know that God, in His time, will hear the prayers of His people. He goes on then and says, "Deliver me out of the mire, and let me not sink. Let me be delivered from them that hate me, and out of the deep waters. Let not the water flood overflow me, neither let the deep swallow me up, and let not the pit shut her mouth upon me." So David goes back, and he's already used some of this same imagery of a drowning man, one stuck in the mire. and he goes back to that image, and he says he's told us what's wrong. He's stuck. He's overwhelmed because of the people who hate him, and now he has gone back and he is praying that God would deliver him and rescue him from this situation that he finds himself in. He continues in this passage, "Hear me, O Lord, for thy loving kindness is good. Turn unto me according to the multitude of thy tender mercies, and hide not thy face from thy servant, for I am in trouble. Hear me speedily." And so he continues to pray that God would hear him, would answer, deliver him, and he out of his love and out of his mercy that he describes in verse 16. And so, as David is in this miry pit, as he describes it, he says, I know that I can depend on the unfailing love of God. I know I can depend on him regardless. His love, his tender mercy, and that word tender mercy that he uses there in verse 16 comes from the same Hebrew word where the word womb, which is talking about, and so it's talking about that the deep love that a mother has for her baby. And so he says, I know God is going to deliver me, and I'm going to stand. And I love that contrasting image here. David says, "I'm stuck in the mud, I'm stuck in the mire, but I'm going to stand firmly on the rock. I may be stuck in the mud, but I'm still standing on solid ground." And that's a great picture, a great image for us as believers. There's a lot of times in life where we feel like we're stuck, where we feel like we're in the mud, we're in the miry clay. But as believers, we can always rest assured and have the confidence that we are standing on the solid rock. And so David teaches us here that when we do find ourselves in those situations, in those circumstances where it seems like everyone is against us, where it seems like we're drowning, where it seems like we're stuck in the mud, that we continue to pray, that we continue to trust God, even when they're not answered right away. Again, David says, I know that in your time, you're going to answer. And so we are taught to be persistent in our prayers. I love the image at the end of the model prayer when Jesus talks about the man who goes to his neighbor's house in the middle of the night and knocks on the door because he's got company and he doesn't have any food. So he goes to his neighbor's house to borrow some food. And the neighbor won't come to the door, but the man, and I'm paraphrasing, the man keeps beating on the door. And finally he comes to the door and gives him bread. And Jesus says, because, and I like this word, he says, because of his importunity, he gave him food, because he persisted, because he continued. And so we're taught to be persistent in our prayer life. Until we get an answer. And again, let me remind you, sometimes the word no is an answer, but we persist in that prayer and we stand on his promises and we trust him, even when we are stuck, when we are feels like we're in over our head, that we will continue to put our confidence in him. And so as we wrap up this section today, I hope that's I do. Again, I think that's a little passage that you ought to do your best to file back and hang on to because it certainly has the potential to be a great help to us. That even when it doesn't seem like things are going right, we can know that in his time, God will see us through. All right, you have a great day, and we'll see you here tomorrow morning.